What if I told you that the absolute main reason a man continues to casually disrespect your boundaries is precisely because of how you are desperately trying to enforce them? You have been heavily conditioned to believe that to be truly respected, you must become loud, argumentative, and aggressively defensive. You send the lengthy, furious text messages, you initiate the exhausting, tearful arguments, and yet nothing ever changes. That is because the exact second you step out of your dark feminine energy and attempt to lecture a man into treating you better, you instantly lose your crown. Today, I am going to reveal the highly guarded psychological secret of the Velvet Fortress. In the next few minutes, you will learn how to enforce devastatingly strict, unbreakable boundaries without ever raising your voice or losing your elegant composure. If you are entirely exhausted from arguing and ready to make him dangerously obsessed with your silent strength, you must drop everything and listen very closely. Welcome to Destiny's Decree. Welcome back to your sanctuary, my dear. Today, we must brutally address a remarkably common, highly destructive misconception that continues to sabotage the emotional empires of countless women. Society has completely distorted the fundamental concept of a boundary, falsely convincing you that to be deeply respected, you must become aggressively defensive. When a man disrespects your time or casually tests your limits, your immediate, deeply conditioned response is often to step entirely out of your dark feminine energy. You instinctively resort to raising your voice, initiating exhaustive logical debates, or engaging in endless maternal scolding. You desperately attempt to sit him down and teach him exactly how he ought to treat you, essentially addressing him as an unruly child rather than a grown man. Let me be entirely ruthless about the mechanics of the male psyche. The absolute second you begin lecturing a man, you instantly cease to be his magnificent, untouchable queen. In his subconscious mind, you rapidly morph into either a masculine opponent he must stubbornly defeat, or far worse, a maternal figure he will instinctively tune out. He categorically does not hear a high-value woman establishing a premium standard. He merely hears exhausting noise. By attempting to verbally argue your worth, you are subconsciously begging him to validate a boundary that you should already be silently enforcing. Furthermore, reacting with furious anger, tearful frustration, or lengthy paragraphs of emotional pain sends a highly dangerous subliminal message directly to his fragile ego. It proves without a shadow of a doubt that his remarkably low-effort behavior has successfully penetrated your emotional fortress. It clearly demonstrates that he possesses the immense power to effortlessly disrupt your inner peace. A true sovereign boundary is never frantically forged in the heat of a desperate argument. It is absolutely not about aggressively dictating what a man cannot do. To truly command his unshakable reverence without ever raising your voice, we must completely abandon this exhausting masculine approach and gracefully step inside the impenetrable walls of what I call the Velvet Fortress. Now, let us explore the magnificent architecture of the Velvet Fortress. A truly high-value woman, firmly anchored in her dark feminine energy, understands a profound, highly guarded psychological secret. The absolute most terrifying, unshakable boundaries are completely silent. They are categorically not constructed from heavy bricks of anger, loud demands, or tearful ultimatums. Rather, they are invisible, impenetrable force fields woven from pure, elegant velvet. When you gracefully operate from this sovereign space, You completely abandon the exhausting, futile desire to control a man's behavior. You accept the brutal reality that you cannot aggressively force him to be consistent, respectful, or deeply invested. However, you possess absolute dictatorial control over something infinitely more valuable: his access to your premium reality. A fundamentally flawed masculine boundary foolishly attempts to tell a man what he is strictly forbidden from doing. It relies on confrontation. A dark feminine boundary, however, silently and elegantly demonstrates exactly what you will do in response to his lack of effort. It is the exquisite, lethal art of the hidden steel blade wrapped perfectly in the finest silk. If he consciously chooses to act with remarkable disrespect, perhaps by sending a lazy midnight text or casually cancelling your date at the 11th hour, you absolutely do not launch into a passionate educational lecture about your high standards. You do not demand that he treats you better. You simply, gracefully close the velvet curtains and permanently revoke his VIP privileges. He is entirely free to make his foolish, low-effort choices, but he must immediately and brutally pay the devastating tax of your sudden absence. This is the profound essence of the Velvet Fortress. You are never actively fighting him, you are simply protecting your peace with absolute ruthlessness. This terrifying, unbothered calm completely short-circuits his fragile ego. It forces his subconscious to acutely realize that your radiant presence is a highly conditional, expensive luxury, absolutely not a guaranteed human right. To practically apply this devastatingly elegant boundary without ever losing your poise, we must master the most powerful physical maneuver in your arsenal: the brutal art of the graceful retreat. Let us move from the theoretical architecture of your fortress to its brutal, highly practical application on the dating battlefield. How exactly do you respond to a man's blatant disrespect without compromising a single ounce of your elegant composure? The answer lies in flawlessly executing a devastating maneuver I call the graceful retreat. Imagine for a moment that he casually cancels your Friday evening date at the very last minute with a remarkably flimsy excuse, or he sends a phenomenally lazy text after days of complete silence. The anxious, unpolished woman will immediately flood his WhatsApp with furious, lengthy paragraphs, bitterly demanding explanations and essentially proving how deeply he has wounded her. A sovereign queen, however, executes the graceful retreat. You absolutely do not send a single angry word. You do not dramatically block him in a fit of passionate rage, nor do you demand a chaotic phone call to emotionally settle the score. You simply and entirely remove the warm sun of your presence from his reality. You gracefully withdraw your attention, your energy, and your highly coveted time without a single whisper of warning. You leave him standing entirely alone in the freezing dark, facing nothing but the deafening, terrifying sound of your absolute silence. You must deeply understand that to the fragile male ego, your profound, unbothered silence is infinitely more punishing and agonizing than the most dramatic, screaming argument you could ever possibly muster. When you argue, you are still actively investing your precious energy into him. You are visibly proving that his pathetic actions still hold immense power over your emotional state. You are giving him the exact validation he secretly craves. But when you elegantly retreat and completely sever the supply line of your premium attention, you send a chilling, undeniable message directly to his subconscious. His low-effort behavior did not anger you, it simply bored you. It instantly disqualified him from your magnificent empire. This level of total, ruthless detachment leaves him desperately grappling with the sudden, terrifying loss of your value, completely unable to manipulate his way back in. However, the graceful retreat is only one side of the coin. What happens when you must verbally reject his low-effort advances? To maintain this impenetrable aura, you must master the exquisite dark feminine art of the unjustified no. There will inevitably be moments, my dear, when a silent retreat is not an option and you must verbally communicate a rejection to his remarkably low-effort propositions. This is precisely where the vast majority of women completely dismantle their own sovereignty. The anxious, unpolished woman feels a desperate, crippling need to heavily justify every single boundary she sets. If he casually suggests a highly inappropriate last-minute date at his flat, she will immediately reply with an exhausting paragraph of logical reasoning. "I am not coming over tonight because it is far too late, I have work tomorrow, and I feel we need to get to know each other better first." Let me be entirely clear. The absolute second you provide a man with a detailed list of your reasons, you are stepping directly into a trap. By over-explaining your refusal, you are essentially treating your magnificent standards as a mere suggestion, leaving them completely open for debate, logic, and bartering. You are subconsciously asking for his permission to hold that boundary. He will simply look at your long list of excuses and immediately attempt to dismantle them one by one, turning your dignity into a cheap negotiation. A sovereign queen, operating flawlessly within her dark feminine energy, masters the exquisite art of the unjustified no. When presented with a remarkably lazy, unacceptable offer, she does not panic, and she certainly does not launch into a defensive lecture. She simply replies with a polite, devastatingly cold smile. "That simply will not work for me. Have a wonderful evening." And she leaves it exactly there. A complete, unshakable sentence. You categorically refuse to offer a single exhausting explanation to cushion his fragile ego. You do not barter with your dignity. This breathtakingly elegant refusal leaves your magnificent aura of mystery completely intact. It visually and verbally proves that your high-value boundaries are absolute dictatorial laws of your empire, absolutely not subjects for a casual debate. When a man hits this elegant wall of ice and realizes he cannot logically argue his way out of your standards, a rather fascinating psychological shift occurs within his mind. This brings us to the ultimate, magnificent result of your velvet fortress, the paradox of his absolute obsession. Finally, my dear, we arrive at the breathtaking psychological conclusion of this entire strategy, the magnificent paradox of his obsession. Mainstream society has force-fed you a remarkably toxic lie. It has convinced you that if you are entirely uncompromising with your boundaries, men will simply view you as difficult, cold, or unapproachable, and they will immediately run away. The dark feminine truth, however, is the exact devastating opposite. It is precisely this unshakable, elegant strictness that violently triggers a man's deepest, most primal obsession. You must understand that men are subconsciously hardwired to constantly test the fences of your reality. They will casually push your boundaries simply to see what they are made of. When he tests you, he is fully expecting the standard, highly predictable reaction of the modern woman: a sudden burst of emotional chaos, frantic arguments, tearful paragraphs, or desperate attempts to negotiate his behavior. But when he forcefully crashes against your velvet fortress and meets absolutely nothing but a polite freezing and utterly unbothered silence, his entire psychological framework shatters. he suddenly realizes with a profound sense of awe that he possesses absolutely zero power to disturb your inner peace. You did not lose your temper, you simply removed his access. This stunning display of emotional sovereignty commands a level of respect that borders on mystical reverence. He looks at you and instantly recognizes that he is no longer dealing with a fragile, easily manipulated girl, but an untouchable diamond-tier queen who operates in an entirely different stratosphere. Instead of walking away, he becomes dangerously addicted to your silent strength. The sheer fact that you are so incredibly comfortable with the idea of losing him makes you the absolute most valuable, terrifyingly magnetic prize he has ever encountered. He is no longer casually testing your limits, he is desperately re-evaluating his entire approach, obsessed with elevating his own standard just to prove he is worthy of standing inside your magnificent empire. By mastering the Velvet Fortress, you have not just protected your peace, you have permanently secured your throne. Ultimately, my dear, your profound inner peace is a premium, highly exclusive luxury, and it is absolutely not open for casual negotiation or exhausting debate. Mastering the Velvet Fortress is categorically not about playing petty games. It is the ultimate, necessary protection of your sovereign empire. Let him furiously knock on the gates, but never ever lower the drawbridge for a man who refuses to meet your silent standard. Now, I have a rather vital question for you. What is the absolute most exhausting, pathetic excuse a man has ever given you when you simply said no without an explanation? Expose his fragile ego in the comments below. I always read every single one. If you are entirely ready to permanently stop arguing with low-effort men and truly master the unspoken, highly protective dynamics of dark feminine psychology, ensure you elegantly subscribe to Destiny's Decree and firmly ring the notification bell. Until next time, keep your fortress closed and let them wonder.